This is the Beyond 50 radio program. We want to thank you for joining us from wherever you are and wherever you will be. I'm Daniel Davis, and welcome to the program. On the program today, we're going to be talking about a very special writer that's out there that's been entertaining and engaging children in reading for quite a long time. In fact, he's taken his writing to such a level that he's the #1 New York Times best-selling author of what is known as the Alex Rider series. We're going to be talking briefly today about his newest and last book in the series, which is Russian Roulette, the story of an assassin, and find out what it takes to get to a level where you're writing such magnificent stories that really compel a generation to want to read. He is a world-renowned screenwriter for film and television. He's received multiple awards, and he, as I have said, is, of course, the #1 New York Times best-selling author. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Anthony Horowitz. Anthony, how are you?
I'm very well, Daniel. Thank you for that very kind introduction.
Well, you got to be kind when you're dealing with assassins, especially Russian ones.
Well, that's certainly true. Be careful. That's right.
Now, you do a lot of writing. Were you someone who grew up in a family of storytellers, or how did this all start for you?
Well, you know, the funny thing is that nobody in my family had ever written anything. I didn't come from a family that had any media or arts. They were all sort of business people and lawyers and that sort of thing. So I was sort of that little weird seed that sprouted from who knows where. But ever since I was a kid, I loved stories. I was, 8 years old. I was already writing and reading, and books were my life. And for me, even though I was the only one, there was never anything else I wanted to do.
Uh-huh. You know, because I looked at this, and the way that you write in such simple language, such complex interweavings of relationships with people, especially when you think about Alex Rider, who's pretty much the world's only teenage spy. How did this come about?
Well, I mean, I don't quite know why I decided to write for young people, but I can tell you this, that I've always had a great belief in the power of story and storytelling. And when I write, what matters to me more than anything is that young people should be able to turn the pages and get caught up in the plot and to forget their computer games and their cell phones and everything else and just immerse themselves in the world of the book. And that's how I've always written. I just love the sort of that sort of cliffhanger that you've got to just read a little bit more. I love it when I meet a kid or a parent who says, my son got your book and last night I caught him out of the covers with a flashlight. And I'm not recommending that as a way to read books. I'm sure it's not good for your eyes, but I still love to hear it, but that sort of enthusiasm has been kindled.
Well, you got to imagine how nice that is that you're catching your child underneath the covers with a flashlight to read a book rather than trying to play the Game Boy, for instance.
That's right.
Now, tell us about how you came to develop Alex Rider. Was this something you'd been working on did it kind of inspire you as a child, or where did it come about?
It was really going to the Bond movies. I was, as a kid, I loved the Bond movies. Sean Connery, then Roger Moore. And it was a big event every year for me to see the latest Bond. But then as Roger Moore got on with the part and did one movie after another, he got older and older. He was 57 years old when he played James Bond for the last time. And about that time, I thought to myself, this is too old. Wouldn't it be great if James Bond was a teenager? Mm-hmm. And it was just one of those light bulb moments where sort of, ping, why not? Why don't I do that? I'll write a book about a kid who isn't, a superhero, who isn't somebody who wants to be a spy. He's an ordinary kid, but he gets sucked into this world and turned into a sort of a young James Bond. And I wrote the first book, Stormbreaker, a long time ago. It was an immediate success and led to the next one, Point Blank, Skeleton Key, and so on, all the way up to Russian Roulette, which finishes the series.
Now, did you find that as you were writing Alex Rider, and of course the characters that were developed around him, that you kind of allowed them to take a life on their own, and did they go into ways that you didn't anticipate or expect?
Daniel, that is what happened. That is sort of the writing process. You invent this character, this kid, and he appears in one book, then two, then three, and the more you write about him, the more you find yourself learning about him and about the people that he relates to, the spies who manipulate him and the friends that he has both at school and his family and that sort of thing. So yes, I mean, the funny thing is that Alex only grows 1 year in all the 9 books that I wrote about him. It's 1 year in his life, a very, very busy year, but he matures a great deal. He really comes to understand the world more and more, and that sort of just happened by itself.
Mm-hmm. I know it's interesting to note, I was picking up from an interview that you had done where you were talking about what you write for. For instance, as you go to research this newest book, that you had spent some time in Moscow. and that you weren't so interested in writing about the political or the economic essences of what was going on there, but more of who's going to get shot, where's the chases are going to happen.
Well, that's it. I mean, the young readers who read my books don't want a history lesson. They don't want politics. They don't want sort of lengthy character studies. My belief is that my young readers, enjoy a chase, they enjoy danger, they enjoy a modicum of violence and excitement. And if on the back of that I can tell them a little bit about life in Russia and what it would be like to be a boy growing up in the sort of turn of the century to, I'd say around 2000 in Moscow and such, then that's a little bonus. That's an added bonus. And I think all the books I've written have had that somewhere in them, a sort of a little, we call it educational or didactic or whatever, that's there if they want it. But really, I'm a storyteller, and I'm out to engage.
Mm-hmm. Now, was there a time, because, people get started, especially in writing, art, whatever the case may be, acting, and it isn't so easy when you get up and running, and sometimes it goes on, and all of a sudden you don't really feel that you're putting food on the table, and you're thinking to yourself, maybe I ought to just do something else. Was that ever happening to you at all? Was there a point where you just about gave up?
Well, the awful truth is that I'm not sure there's anything else I can do. I mean, I'm a born writer, and if you take writing away from me, there's not much left. But the simple answer to your question is no. I would say to any of your listeners now who are thinking about writing books that the first thing you must have as a writer is self-belief. You've got to believe in what you're doing, and you've got, even when you get knocked back, and every writer gets knocks, you've got to go with that and say, well, okay, maybe this isn't the right book, let's get on to the next one, or just try something different, whatever. I have never in my life thought about quitting. It's just not in my nature.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear, because I know sometimes you'll hear stories, I was just about at the end, I just about put it away, but I thought I'm going to do it one more time, and that's the moment that hits.
True. Forgive me cutting in, but that is sort of true of Stormbreaker. I was writing television, I was writing movies, I was writing adult novels, and I was doing kids' books. The kids' books weren't selling, and I did think to myself, maybe I should stop writing kids' books and write something different. And then I thought, no, I'll give it one more go. There's this idea I've got for a teenage spy, and I went on and wrote that, and that was the one that sort of, took me into the sales figures that you mentioned, and, bestseller lists. So I have been tempted to stop, but it is not in my nature to give up. I cannot stress enough how important it is for writers, for anybody, any young person who has an ambition. Don't believe the people who say no. Believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, it goes along the line, too, as I've been broadcasting this program here, going on 10 years, actually, next month. And people say, well, how is it going? And I said, well, there's some times that it's kind of like this, but when you get the opportunities to meet and talk with people such as yourself, I also tell them, well, if I stopped doing this, what else would I be doing?
Well, congratulations first on your anniversary, which is great. 10 years is a long time in broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And I can only agree with you. I think that people like yourself and me, we're very fortunate. We're blessed because we do what we love. And for me, writing has always been that. I've never considered the paycheck. I've never considered my figures on the best-selling list or whatever. What matters to me is that when I sit down at my desk and I get my pen out and some paper, I actually love what I'm doing. I can't wait to get started.
Mm-hmm. Now, you do this every day, writing as a habit.
I write as a passion more than a habit. I think that it's every day, certainly, yeah.
Okay. I just wondered that because I remember talking with Stephen King, and, he was saying, when you sit down, you must sit down with the intention to write, and you should at least have a goal so that you connect with the habit, because a lot of times people decide they want to write, but they don't engage it enough to have a habit, and then they put it off and go do something else, and that's where you're missing the real creativity being allowed to come out of you. So you don't really sit and wait for inspiration. You kind of go to it and let it come to you.
Listen, I'm not going to argue with Stephen King. I envy you the fact that you've spoken with him, because he's a great, I'm one of his greatest fans and admirers. I think he's an awesomely good writer and has produced so many amazing books. And also, incidentally, a brilliant book on writing itself, which I recommend. It's a question of words. Yes, I do agree entirely with what Stephen King is saying there, that when I come up in the morning to my desk, I'm not coming up to twiddle my thumbs and to look out of the window and to drink cups of coffee. I'm there to write the next chapter or the next scene in whatever it is I'm doing. Now, I don't use the word habit, because for me, habit is something habit is setting the alarm before I go to bed or cleaning my teeth in the morning. Writing is something deeper for me. It's something more from my heart that, I write like I breathe. It's something that I have to do, and I'm a compulsive writer. And I think that's what it still motivates me. I've been writing now 30 years. That passion hasn't dwindled any.
Well, that's very exciting to know that you found something that you're going to be doing for the rest of your life.
Well, I'm getting on a bit now, so I'm not sure how much of the rest of it there is. But yeah, I'll still be writing at the very end. Look, Stephen King himself is getting on a bit, but he still manages to produce hundreds of thousands of words a year. It's very impressive.
It certainly is. Now, back to the Alex Rider series. This is going to be the last book, Russian Roulette?
I think so, yes. I mean, the Alex Rider has been a very big part of my life, and I'm very proud of the work I've done, the 9-10 books that are out there. But I think that it's important as a writer to keep moving on, to keep moving forward, to come up with other ideas and other sorts of, landscapes to visit. I've always said that writing is a great adventure, and that you should, enjoy it as an adventure. Doing more Alex books would be great, but, enough already. Let's find something new.
Mm-hmm. So what did you have in mind that you're going to move on for?
Well, last year I wrote a novel about Sherlock Holmes called The House of Silk, and I have a sequel to that coming out in October this year, so I'm working in sort of 19th century detective stories. I do have some more kids' books in me. I might do another book with my characters, the Diamond Brothers, that some of your listeners might have heard of. And I have a trilogy in my head, a sort of another action-adventure, suspense-filled story about a boy in a family in London whose life on his 14th birthday is simply turned upside down and destroyed and torn apart, and how he then copes to reassemble it again. He has a mysterious enemy who comes out of nowhere and just does it. So it's sort of a story of revenge and a mystery and all sorts of things. And that sort of gets me quite excited. And I'm writing all sorts of other things too. I have other TV shows that I write. Foyle's War, some of your listeners might watch. It's a detective series I write, and we're at this very moment shooting more episodes of that. There's always something new to write. So I have no worries about leaving Alex. I'm sad to say goodbye to him, but I'm very excited about moving forward.
And you end it with Russian Roulette, and as I was reading in the book, there was one part I got to that I was really surprised by. I thought, this is actually a children's book where they actually have a scene that you wrote where Russian Roulette is actually being done.
Well, that is right. I mean, the book is... I don't think this is a book for sort of 6- and 7-year-olds. It's been read by 10-year-olds in this country and in America, and so far nobody has been traumatized. Nobody has written to me to say it's too violent or too strong. And in fact, I'm very proud of the fact that in all the 30 years I've been writing kids' books, nobody has ever yet complained about levels of violence, or no kid has said that he's had nightmares as a result of my books. I think that's an important thing for a writer to be able to say that. I'm not setting out to upset anybody. But you're right. Russian Roulette is quite a tough ride. It's it has one or two very dark moments, including a moment when this poor little kid is forced to play Russian Roulette with a real bullet. But nothing horrible happens. He comes through it, and the book is actually about somebody finding themselves and becoming strong. It's also about somebody choosing to become bad, which is not something you read about often in a book for young adults.
Well, and the interesting thing about the story, too, is about the young boy who becomes sort of the bad guy. You look as to why this occurs, and that's the funny thing. When you look at Bond movies, there's the bad guy, so to speak, but you really don't realize, well, what motivates somebody to go to that level? They just decided he's the bad guy, or was there more to it? And you realize that this one here was really a tale of woe for this boy.
That was the challenge and the excitement of the book, and I think that's what made it worth writing. But you're absolutely right. When we see people in Bond movies, they're the bad guy, or in any movies, for that matter, in life. People who are rulers of certain countries where horrible things are happening are automatically painted as sort of the villains. And I think it's quite important to humanity and to the way we live to step back and ask ourselves, what is it that turned these people into the monsters that they became? Every child on this planet is born equal at the beginning in terms of their choices of whether they are going to be good or bad, whether they're going to contribute to the planet or make life for other people more unhappy and miserable. And I think it's very interesting and worth looking at the reason why a 12 or 13-year-old could decide quite actively to become a character like Yasin Grigorovich rather than a character like Alex Rider. And in the book, in fact, there's a moment when Yasin says that he and Alex are basically just reflections of each other in a distorting mirror. and he himself is wondering why it is that he took the decisions he made and went the way he decided. That's what the book is about.
And what I like about it, too, is you see there are moments that he gets to make good decisions, makes them, but then they don't turn out so well.
That's right. I mean, nobody is all bad. People start, I think, meaning well, and obviously there are exceptions to that rule. I mean, there are some people who seem to have been put onto this planet to just wreak havoc. But I still try to look at the best in everyone, to try and see that at the end of the day they were a human being, they were a child, they were a baby. That there was a chance when they might have been good. And I think it's a very interesting subject to look at what it is that turns people the wrong way.
Now, how must this be for your two sons? Having a father that writes these kinds of books that are a lot of fun for kids and adults to read as well.
Well, my sons absolutely love being part of the books. They've been involved in the writing of the book since they were very, very small. They're 25 and 23 now. But, my older son, Nick, was very much the model for Alex Rider. He was that very sporty, active, danger-seeking kid, whereas my other son, Cass, who is younger, is the most brilliant critic. I mean, he reads every single one of my books and gives me really quite strong advice, like sort of, Dad, the first 30 pages are boring, tear them up, or he has a word, cringe. Dad, this section is so cringe, you can't write that. And I listen to him. He's very, very smart. And I love the fact that as a family, my wife and I have been married now for 26 years, and she produces Foyle's War, so we work together, and my sons are involved. We are a family that is very, very close, and we help each other out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wondered that because as I've talked with many authors over the years, a fair amount of time what they tell me is they write for a specific person or a specific couple of people. Has that kind of been that way for you as well?
No, it isn't, actually. I'm not like that. I think I write for one person only, and that person is myself, and it was me aged 14. I remember what I liked when I was a kid, and I'm writing the stories I would have wanted to read. So no, I don't write for my sons. I mean, they help me, but I don't write for them, nor do I ever really think about an audience. You just a moment ago said to me that the book had its dark moments and that some people might be off-put by that, but that didn't stop me putting them in because I thought it was the right thing to do. It was a story I would have liked to have read. Of course I'm responsible, levels of violence, the sort of language I use. If I upset teachers, if I upset parents, my books aren't going to get through to the kids, so I have to have them in mind. But I don't sit down at my desk and worry about my audience. I write the story I think I want to write.
Well, and especially what you're writing here, and I certainly didn't mean that to be misinterpreted as, hey, what do you think about this? And as much as it needs to be edgy like that, because the world can be a very edgy place.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. Young people will see on television, in half an hour in the evening, worse things than they'll find in my books. And there is another side to this, too, that young people these days can't really get out as much as they used to, certainly in this country. I don't know about in the States, but, we're so worried about young people, but they can't get into scrapes. They can't get into trouble. They can't have any sort of any great hardship. And a lot of kids now have their adventures vicariously through my books. And so the danger in my books and the violence in my books is something that they can experience, but it's controlled and it has a happy ending. So that the whole experience, I think, is a benevolent one.
Yeah, it's been excellent to have you here on the program as we're just about up here. But I wanted to find out, first of all, if you do have a website for people to go to find out more about you and your work. And maybe kind of give us a glimpse about what's coming in here on the horizon for people to anticipate.
Okay, well, my website is anthonyhorowitz.com. We'll tell you that. Or if you look up Alex Rider on the net, you'll find plenty of websites to going. There's alexrider.com as well. And all of them carry stuff about me. Or just put my name into a search engine, Anthony Horowitz, and there's plenty of places you'll be sent to. In terms of what's coming up next, well, as I said, we have a new series of Foyle's War, which will be on air pretty soon. Then I'm doing another TV series called New Blood, which is a sort of a crime thriller thing, which I'm working on. And I've talked about the book trilogy, which I'm going to start work on pretty soon as well. It's a lot to do, and even talking about it makes me feel a little tired, I must say.
Yeah, but if your passion wasn't there, it probably would wear you out.
I'll get through. I'll do it, yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today. It's been a real pleasure and an eye-opener, as my wife says. Have you ever heard of Alex Rider? Man, this guy is great. She loves reading your stuff, and I thought, well, let's talk with him on the program and see if we can inspire others to do the same, because writers are kind of giving us that eyepiece, that eyeglass, the inner worlds of who we are, and they bring that out. So as you were saying earlier, we can experience that stuff sometimes from the safety of just reading.
Well, I couldn't have put it better myself. My very, very good wishes to your wife and to you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. Be sure to join us at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. We'll have a hot link there so you can find out more about this Russian roulette from the Alex Rider series. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.